Where once they stood, we stand. In Newfoundland, we remember those who came before us. Tonight, we're going to tell you some stories of the spirits that won't let us forget, because they're still here. Welcome to Tales from the Mist. The Supreme Courthouse in downtown St. John's is one of the newer buildings built on that site. The first courthouse, built in 1730, burned down in 1846. The next was built in 1847, and it burned down in 1892. After several temporary locations, the current building opened in 1904. The fires have not seemed to interrupt the occasional sightings of what is believed to be Catherine Snow, the last woman hung in Newfoundland in 1834. Catherine Snow lived a difficult outport life with her husband John Snow in Salmon Cove. John Snow was a violent man and was known to raise his hand more than once against Catherine. Tobias Mandeville, a cousin of Catherine Snow, showed a great deal of affection towards her when John was away. A servant, Arthur Spring, would later say their affection went deeper than friendship, and that was sure to upset John Snow when found out. One night, John Snow came back too soon and discovered the pair. There was a fight, apparently an argument, and then John Snow disappeared without a trace, or so they thought. Soon the authorities began an investigation. Bloodstains were discovered on a fishing stage, and it was believed that John Snow was murdered and his body thrown into the sea. Whispers in the community about Catherine's unhappy marriage and her closeness with Tobias made them prime suspects. Mandeville and Spring were arrested, while Catherine fled into the woods. Being pregnant, she could not find enough to eat. Starving, she turned herself into the authorities to be tried. The trio were brought to trial in 1834. And according to Spring's testimony, claiming that Tobias and Catherine were lovers that wanted Snow gone so they could marry, he claimed his innocence. The judge disagreed with this. The judge carefully read his instructions to the all-male jury. After the jury deliberated, they returned a verdict of guilty. The judge then handed down a sentence of death by public hanging, and they were to be gibbeted. Their bodies left to rot on display as a warning to all. Tobias, Arthur were hung immediately, but Catherine was allowed to have her baby. As soon as it was born, she was brought to a window and had a noose put on her neck. Her last words were claimed to be, "I was a wretched woman, but I am innocent of any participation in the crime of murder, innocent as an unborn child." With those words, she was hung. Catherine Snow wasn't long in the ground before rumors began to circulate throughout St. John's that her ghost had been seen in the area where she had been hung. The stories were reported in the local newspapers. Soon people came forward to say that they had seen her ghost in the Catholic cemetery. Since then, the Supreme Court has had sightings of Catherine. She has been seen outside where once she was hanged from the old building. Sighted on stairwells and hallways, and she surprised many employees of the courthouse. The elevator moves from floor to floor on its own, and footsteps are heard in empty hallways. Was Catherine guilty? Some say no. In 2012, a trial was recreated, with modern lawyers and prosecutors coming to the conclusion that the evidence against her was circumstantial. The Telegram, Tara Bradbury, reported on the trial, and the new verdict was not guilty. Does Catherine haunt this place due to being falsely accused and hung? Could it be remorse or guilt? Or is she just looking for her baby? We will never know for certain, but when the sun sets on the courthouse, all is not quiet inside. While growing its population, Newfoundland had many influences from Europe and the United Kingdom. Commerce, fishing, trade were all intertwined. One interesting story that seemed to have traveled from England to Newfoundland was a manifestation called Springheel Jack. Merry Meeting Road in St. John's was the last sighting of this character. First seen in London in early 1800s, he was described as having a black cloak and a devil-like aspect. Others said he was tall and had a gentleman-like appearance. Who was Springheel Jack? Prankster? Demon? Manifestation of an evil spirit? Witnesses describe him as being able to leap great distances and avoid capture by vanishing. One theory is that he is a human who participated in an early form of what now is called parkour, a military style of obstacle jumping. Was he an early athlete or an acrobat? After a lovely evening out, two young ladies had the unfortunate incident of coming face to face with Jack. They were walking home when they spotted someone leering at them. Fearful of his appearance, they were terrified when he leapt down and confronted them and gave chase. No sightings have been seen since, or reported. However, there is one interesting plaque on a home in Merry Meeting Road. It reads, "In the fall of 1929, this area of Merry Meeting Road was terrorized by a bizarre character dubbed Springheel Jack, so named because of his ability to cover great distances with a single bound. This mysterious character in high boots, cape, and helmet would taunt passers-by from roofs of houses and then disappear before anyone could catch him. It was in this spot in September 1929 that Jack made his second appearance, and despite being chased by his victim, made good of his escape into a field behind. He was seen several times over the next month, but eluded police capture until the end of October, at which time he disappeared for good. The mystery of Springheel Jack has never been solved. Next time you are walking in St. John's at night in the fall, take a look at the rooftops and remember to be ready to run. It is said you can still see the devil's hand on a rock in Fortune Harbor, Notre Dame Bay. Mr. Kinch Lair was a professional card player. Kinch Lair indulged his passion for the game every chance he could. He loved all card games, but a chance to make extra money with poker hands was his specialty. Outport living had times where all one had to do was kill time. Once household needs were seen to, people passed time with music, socials, and cards. Kinch Lair would spend hours playing with friends and strangers, usually ending up with all the winnings. Kinch Lair boasted that all who would listen about his winning ways, and one evening, hearing a card game was calling, he walked several miles for a game. After several hours at the table, and after many drinks and cleaning out his opponents, Kinch Lair laughingly proclaimed he was so good, he was good enough to play cards and even beat the devil. His card-playing friends scoffed at this, but Kinch Lair repeated his claim, downed a drink, and began his walk home. After a while he came upon a stranger in the woods. With the rum in his blood, he did not find it strange that the man had appeared out of nowhere. The stranger challenged Kinch Lair to a card game on the nearby rock. Always up for a challenge, Kinch Lair accepted. As the game progressed, the stranger became more agitated, while losing hand after hand. Kinch Lair found this amusing, and quickly sobered up when he noticed a twitching tail from beneath the stranger's coat. Deciding it was time to end the game, Kinch Lair put down his final winning hand. Upon seeing this, the stranger howled in anger and slammed his hand on the rock. Smoke rose from the handprint, and the stranger had vanished. Kinch Lair was not only won the game, but realized he did not lose his soul. Perhaps he would be a little more humble when boasting about his skills. As for the handprint, the devil does not like to lose. popular location to get the most romantic and professional wedding pictures is in the Newman Vaults. Built hundreds of years ago, the vaults are a testament to superior craftsmanship. The brick walls are as beautiful now as they were when they were first built. So beautiful, in fact, it is thought that some have decided to stay. The Newmans of Dartmouth, England, have a long tradition as traders, merchants, and wine producers. In the 1500s, the family entered the trade of Newfoundland codfish and cod oil. This established a trade triangle of fishing supplies from Britain to Newfoundland, codfish from Newfoundland to Portugal, and Portuguese wine to England. Robert Newman came to Newfoundland and eventually controlled up to 10% of Newfoundland exports. For centuries, wine produced in Portugal was brought back to Newfoundland. In the 17th century, England declared war on the French. It was then very hard to get French wine in Newfoundland. Drinking Portuguese port, which had then been called the English wine, became a patriotic act. There are many suggestions to explain the quality of Newman port matured in Newfoundland, ocean waves rocking the ships during the voyage across the Atlantic, to the damp climate in Newfoundland. The port was generally aged for 4 years before being shipped back to England. The exact origins of the Newman Vaults remain uncertain. Some suggest it might have been at one time a military storage for weapons. The earliest record of vaults occur on an 1807 map of St. John's artifacts recovered in a dig dating back to the 1780s, indicating it was built in the late 1800s or early 19th century, making it one of the oldest buildings still standing in St. John's. The Newmans had possession of the vaults in 1840, and by 1997 it had been designated as a provincial heritage structure. Many people choose to have their wedding photos taken there. Its romantic light is beautiful. Occasionally, some images that come out aren't just of the wedding party, but of the spirits that are still in the Newman Vaults. There's been talk all over St. Shots about ghost ships. They have some of the worst conditions all over the world when the seas are up. Worse, there are rocks all over the place that caused many a shipwreck. There's talk about the ghostly lifeboats with women and children on board that go back and forth from the sea where the harpooner was wrecked. When you see one of the lights peering through the fog when you're out on the fishing grounds, you figure it may be one of those lifeboats, or worse. There's talk that these stories were just a bunch of old men gone foolish out in the fog until 2 sailors had a run-in with a strange vessel. It was May 18th, 1968. Jack and Steve were making their way back home off the water when it got very foggy. They started to hear the foghorn off the coast of Trepassey, but then they heard another sound. They realized it was the sound of a boat's whistle. not a foghorn. What they saw they will never forget. They aimed towards the sound, and not being able to see anything, when suddenly this boat appeared out of nowhere. The weather was bad, and they would rather have gone on, but since the boat was drifting, they decided to investigate. They could not see the name, but noticed several people on board looking worried or scared. They figured they should try and help, so they climbed over the rail, startled to notice that something was not right with those passengers. It was like something already bad was happening. There were 2 or 3 families on board, and they were dressed unusual in clothes from a long time ago. They were staring off into the sea like they did not know where they were or what was happening. Jack and Steve worked their way slowly to the wheelhouse when they saw the captain staring off into space too. They asked the captain the name of his boat, but there was no answer. Then they asked him what date he'd left port and what they were doing there. They looked him straight in the eyes and answered in a very official way. "We are in a very urgent situation here, son. We came upon the coast yesterday, May 18th, 1880, but we have been afloat in these foggy waters ever since. Will you please help us?" Realizing the date was almost 100 years prior, Jack and Steve had to get off that boat right away before they came a part of it. They told the captain to hold tight, and they would go get help. The last thing they heard the captain say was, "Hurry, please." But they did not stay to say anything else. They got past the passengers and got off the rail as fast as they could. The two kept quiet about the encounter for a while, but then Jack overheard another story about a shipwreck, so he told their story. It was said that the wreckage was of a steamer that had been recovered right around the same place that Jack and Steve had encountered the ghost ship. There were no survivors, and they did not find the name of the boat. Jack and Steve think it must have been that one. Maybe. But there has been so many of them. We hope you've enjoyed these tales. The next time a shadow moves in the corner of your eye, just out of sight, or you hear something you can't explain, just remember to tell a good story about it.